Deepin is both a Linux distro and a Linux desktop, and over the past couple of years, it has been going through a bit of a rough patch. It is being dropped by distros, it's not being super well maintained, and this recently resulted in a vote in Fedora. From the FESCO meeting on May 19th, 2026, we had this: Deepin security review request. Agreed. Retire all packages maintained by the Deepin DE group, that is basically the group that maintains the Deepin packages on Fedora, with the message mentioning the FESCO ticket. Ask Relang to not unretire those packages if a request is made, unless they pass review again. Basically, if they want to bring the packages back, they need to be re-reviewed and basically show that they are well maintaining these packages once again. Along with that, retire all packages in the list, once again mentioning the FESCO ticket, and also if they want to bring the packages back, they need to be re-reviewed again. Both these passed absolutely unanimously. They passed unanimously because this has been a long time coming. Nobody here hates Deepin. Nobody here says, oh, Deepin's a bad environment, we don't want it to be around. The problem is basically nobody's been keeping the packages working. Nobody is maintaining it. It doesn't really make any sense to keep it. So all of this started in Fedora with this issue here when their website decides it wants to load Deepin security review request. This was closed about 6 days ago, opened a year ago. But all of this links back to another discussion happening over in OpenSUSE, where they as well were getting rid of the Deepin packages. This happened about a year ago. I did talk about this at the time, but let's go back over it once again for anyone who hadn't seen that video. This documents a string of events where Deepin package maintainers, Deepin developers, basically had no interest in making sure the environment was in a good and safe state to use, and were making a lot of choices that frankly didn't make any sense. And it's one thing to make them and then fix them when they've been reported. But you'll see there were very long stretches of time where critical issues were reported and nothing was said. Starting with bypassing of the OpenSUSE packaging policy via a license agreement dialogue. Honestly, this by itself should be enough to just get the packages entirely out of the distro, or at the very least, ban the person who is maintaining them. We have been in contact with the OpenSUSE Deepin packager ever since 2017, and have whitelisted various Deepin debus components in the meantime. A number of remaining Deepin review bugs have seen little progress in recent years, however, because the issues we pointed out have not been addressed properly. Perhaps tired of waiting, the packager decided to try a different avenue to get the remaining Deepin components into OpenSUSE, skirting the review requirements. In January 2025, during the routine reviews, we stumbled upon the Deepin feature-enabled package, which was introduced April 27th, 2021, without consulting us or even informing us. This innocently named package implements a license agreement dialogue, which basically explains the OpenSUSE security team has doubts about the security of Deepin, but to properly use Deepin, certain components need to be installed anyway. Thus, if the user does not care about security, then the license should be accepted. If the user accepts the license, all of the missing dbus configuration files and polkit policies will automatically be installed into the system. This is a very big no-no. If the distro you're on is saying, hey, we don't like these packages, they need to be properly reviewed, they have security issues, you need to fix them, you can't just then say as a packager on that distro, I don't care about any of that, I'm just gonna ship them anyway. Like, you're on the distro, you should be, operating on the distro you're on. This wasn't a Deepin developer, this was a packager for Deepin on SUSE, on OpenSUSE. And maybe there was absolutely nothing wrong with any of the stuff being installed. But you can't do this. This is like a massive violation of trust. A review bug has been running for Deepin File Manager since 2019 without the package reaching a satisfying state. Offering users the ability to run a script to activate the problematic components is less critical than automatically doing so via a crafted license dialog, but is still an unclean and questionable approach. That was not the only one, though. If it was just a one-off thing, that's fine. Let's get into more of that. Deepin API initial review of dbus service and polkit actions. This was a review request we received for Deepin. It reached us during a time of restructuring in our team, which caused a delay of about half a year before we found time to work on it. Deepin API contained a dbus service which ran as root, offering a miscellaneous collection of dbus methods on the dbus system bus for playing audio files and various other things like that. Now, for dbus services and things like that, they should be running as a dedicated service account, not as root. We found various issues in the dbus method implementations. Most prominently, any user in the system was allowed to run various commands like rfkill with arbitrary parameters as root. Polkit authentication was only implemented in some dbus methods, while others merely had a to-do marker to add authentication. Furthermore, the polkit authentication that was implemented for some methods was subject to a race condition allowing authentication bypass. Basically, none of it worked. Security reviewers tried to reach out, and basically got no response. After this initial activity, there was no more progress for 6 months, which is why we closed the bug due to inactivity in December 2019. In April 2021, the Deepin packager reopened this bug, assigning it to an upstream developer. In July 2021, we were finally pointed to the proper fixes for the issues, and we granted a whitelisting for this specific Deepin component in August 2021. So it took about 4 years to fix a bug where you had no proper implementation of polkit. You could run commands like rfkill as root, and there was a race condition where you could bypass polkit even if it was implemented. Right then. Next up, Deepin clone, polkit action com.deepin.pkexec.deepin-clone. This is their backup utility. We found a large number of issues in the implementation of this polkit action, such as problematic predictable temp file uses, a world-readable log file in a fixed path in temp, and the possibility to prevent the unmounting of temporarily mounted block devices. In July 2019, we were pointed to a couple of fixes, but we found that some issues still had not been addressed, and the code in general still looked unclean. The more severe issues had been fixed at least, thus we requested CVEs for them and published a report on the OSS security mailing list. We never heard back about the remaining concerns, thus the whitelisting for this component was never granted. Deepin File Manager, dbus service, and polkit actions. We received review requests for the dbus part in the polkit part of the Deepin File Manager package. This application is a file manager similar to Dolphin and KDE, Nautilus and GNOME, various other things, Cosmic File Manager. The dbus service implemented in the package offers methods to perform actions like mounting Samba network shares or managing the Unix group membership for user accounts in the system. This is one of the packages for the Deepin packager eventually implemented a whitelisting bypass, as explained in an earlier section. After reviewing the main dbus service, we cannot help ourselves but call it a security nightmare. The service methods were not only unauthenticated and thus accessible to all users in the system, but the dbus configuration file also allowed anybody to own the dbus service path on the system bus, which could lead to impersonation of the daemon. Among other issues, the dbus service allowed anybody in the system to create arbitrary new Unix groups, add arbitrary users to arbitrary groups, set arbitrary users' Samba passwords, or overwrite almost any file on the system by invoking makefs on them as root, leading to data loss and denial of service. Basically, it was completely cooked. A couple of bug fixes appeared for the polkit issues, but once more, they were incomplete. By December 2019, we did not receive any further responses, thus we closed the bug without whitelisting the polkit policies. In March 2021, that is almost 2 years later, the Deepin packager reopened the bug, but only pointed us to supposed fixes later in 2022. We moved the discussion for the polkit parts into the other bug for the dbus service component at this time. For the dbus service issues, we did not receive any response at all, and thus closed the bug in December 2019 without whitelisting the service. In October 2022, the Deepin packager pointed us to more fixes and new release package for OpenSUSE. The dbus interface received major changes at this point. Polkit authentication was added to some dbus calls now, but it again used the deprecated Unix process subject in an unsafe manner, which would allow to bypass authentication by winning a race condition. In November 2023, the Deepin packager informed us about another new release that was supposed to contain more bug fixes. This time, some of the problematic dbus methods disappeared completely, but some of the original issues as well as confusing and broken Polkit authentication attempts remained. In April 2024, the Deepin packager informed us again about a new release containing bug fixes. Some more dbus methods simply disappeared, some now actually use proper Polkit authentication based on the dbus system bus name. The dbus service configuration still allowed any user in the system to impersonate the service. Also, once more, a bunch of newly added dbus methods introduce new problems. One of them, for example, allowed any user in the system to start the Samba system daemon NMBD and SMBD. A lot of path verification issues also lingered in the new APIs. We did not get further responses for these reviews, and the components are still not whitelisted for OpenSUSE. Deepin Anything, a dbus service. We received a review request for the Deepin Anything package. This component acts as the backend for a desktop search engine. Given the number of unresolved Deepin-related reviews we faced already at this time, we refused to work on this additional review until the others would have been resolved. Basically, we've been dealing with this for so long. All of this stuff is so broken. We know this is also broken. We're not even going to look at this right now. Come back later. And yes, when they eventually got to it, there were really bad bugs. It allowed any user in the system to register the Deepin Anything service on the system bus. In September 2024, the Deepin packager approached us again, pointed changes in the upstream dbus configuration. We did not get around to looking more closely at it again, as we treated Deepin with lower priority at that time. 2 years later, we had DTK Common File Drag Dbus Service. The actual implementation of this dbus service remained a mystery to be found. In the end, Upstream moved this interface to the dbus session bus in July 2021, and no whitelisting on our end was necessary after all. Interestingly, the Deepin packager stated in that bug that Upstream finds itself unable to respond to security bug reports, which is rather worrying for such a big project with such an amount of security issues uncovered. Deepin System Monitor Polkit Policy. This request also arrived in February 2021. It is one of the few Deepin reviews that was completed quite quickly and without any major worries. The Polkit policy only allowed execution of programs like kill, renice, and systemctl via the pkexec utility. This was only allowed with admin authentication, and we whitelisted the policy in May 2021. This one actually went quite smoothly. Deepin App Services, DDE Deconfig Daemon Dbus Service. That is a lot of Ds. Too many Ds. Ds. Nuts. Ha. Got him. Even understanding the purpose of this dbus service was difficult, because there wasn't really any design documentation or purpose description of the component. From looking at the dbus service implementation, we judged it as a kind of system-wide configuration store for Deepin. Contrary to most other Deepin dbus services, this one is not running as root, but as a dedicated unprivileged service user. In December of 2024, we were close to whitelisting this dbus service. With this much time passed, however, we thought it'd be better to have a fresh look at the current situation of the dbus interface. This led to a series of new concerns, partially again in the area of path lookup, but also due to the fact that arbitrary users could read and store configuration for arbitrary other users. There was a lack of Polkit authentication and user separation in the interface. This is just a follow-up of an earlier one, and 2024, Deepin API Proxy Dbus Service. Would you be surprised to know we found a design flaw in the proxy's design which allowed a local root exploit? Surely not. No, that couldn't happen. It is noteworthy that communication with Upstream proved very difficult during the coordinated disclosure process we started for this finding. We did not get timely responses, which nearly led us to a one-sided publication of the report, until Upstream finally expressed their wish to follow coordinated disclosure at the very last moment. The actual publication of the Upstream fix was not communicated to us, and neither was the bug fix shared or discussed with us. This resulted in a follow-up security fix, since Upstream once again relied on the unsafe use of the bulky Unix process subject for authentication. And this is what led to the discovery of the Deepin feature enable, which was circumventing a lot of this stuff actually going through review. There was a lot of stuff just being pushed through that they had no idea was even needing to be reviewed. Lastly, again, with the Deepin System Monitor, this received additions in the form of new dbus services and additional Polkit actions. We accepted the dbus service, although it contained some quirks. We did not find time to fully complete the review of the Polkit actions until now. However, a second look, again, using the deprecated Unix process subject for Polkit authentication in an unsafe way. All of this document resulted in an apology being published by the Deepin project, because this was a major screw up. There was no sensible reason to be using Deepin at this point, basically. It was, this project has serious issues they need to address before anybody else even thinks of packaging it. And at the time, all of this got the attention of the Fedora project, which led to this being created. Most of this is just talking about what took place in that write-up, so let's just skip ahead to this. From a quick look through the other reference components, we don't appear to be shipping several of them, but we do have the Deepin API and the Deepin System Monitor. I suggest we try and apply a security review to our Deepin packages somehow. This might also be a good juncture to ask ourselves why we are apparently a long way behind SUSE in terms of having policies and mechanisms for reviewing security-sensitive package changes. After a couple of months, not much really went down in the thread. There'd been a little bit of discourse here about doing something, but kind of just a bit of back and forth. Eventually we got to this right here. What's the status here? Did Upstream do the work it was planning? Did this land in Fedora? A few months after that, note that many of the Deepin-related packages appear to be in a bad shape. Broken dependencies, broken builds, and/or have already been retired recently. Is the Deepin session on Fedora 43 even still functional? At this point, for a couple of releases, Deepin was already in a really kind of jank state on Fedora anyway, which does make sense considering what was happening over with OpenSUSE. I can't imagine things would be much better here. Also, someone noticed it was no longer being listed as a spin anymore. Whilst there were members of the Deepin SIG, they tried to reach out to them. Nothing. No one's saying anything. No one is responding. The difference here, though, is this person actually was actively working on the packages, at least to some extent. They just weren't responding to any communication. So, a few months earlier, Neil had actually tried to reach out to other members of the SIG who also never responded. There was just nobody responding to any of the concerns here. So, like, what do you even do at that point, right? Like, if nobody is responding to anything, like, what's going on? Eventually, this response was made from Zamir's son. Hi Neil, thanks for reaching out. To make a long story short, all the initial packages of the Deepin DE packages, namely Felix on Mars, Mosquito, no longer with the Fedora project, and Cheesily in FAS and me as the coordinator are being too busy for the vast amount of work in maintaining Deepin DE, and we never got active packages to take the effort, so we have to see it going away from Fedora. I don't know Felix Wang top as us when I was still active on Deepin DE, so I'm not sure if he has other progress afterwards or not. And if Felix Wang do not have much to chime in for these packages, I'm totally fine to retire the whole Deepin DE packages. Basically, what happened is everyone kind of stepped away from the project, everyone got busy, and then nobody communicated that they'd stepped away from the project or they got busy, so things kind of just sat there. Not really doing much. This going on resulted in the vote that I showed you earlier, where everybody agreed to just drop the packages. Now, following all of this going on, we finally got a response from someone involved in the project who was maintaining the packages. It's late to comment on this. I'm okay with retiring the Deepin related stuff, which it has already been done. My available time is occupied with other stuffs. So, all's well that ends well? Everyone pretty much had mostly stepped away, and that's kind of the end of it. Now, I don't know what's happening with Deepin upstream. I assume things have probably gotten better? But with everyone kind of just slowly dropping the packages, it's really hard to say. But let me know, were you aware of what's been going on with Deepin? Did you just watch this entire video and had no idea, and you don't even know why you're here at this point? I would love to know. So, if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, subscribe as well, and check out the Patreon, Subscribe Starly, Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and That's deep.
Something like this.